Lily Carter never imagined she'd step into a place like this. Light from the crystal chandeliers cascaded down onto gleaming wine glasses. Heels clicked sharply against the polished marble floor. In her faded floral dress and worn-out flats, Lily looked like a flawed sketch in an exhibit of perfection. She only meant to accompany her Aunt Margaret, the only family she had left, to what was described as an important networking gala. But from the moment she walked into the grand Montrose ballroom, Lily knew she didn't belong. The first glances sliced through her like invisible blades. A group of women dressed in exclusive designer gowns, their hair flawless, whispered and chuckled among themselves. At the center of them stood Veronica Sterling, a powerhouse in the media world, her eyes ice cold as they landed on Lily. "Oh, Margaret, you didn't mention you were bringing a companion," Veronica said, her voice dripping with polite cruelty and a half-smile that masked ridicule. "This is my niece, Lily," Aunt Margaret replied, her hand gently resting on Lily's shoulder. "She works at a local bakery and is learning about the event business." "How charming," Veronica replied, though her eyes told an entirely different story. Lily forced a smile. Her heart pounded as she took her seat on a gold-rimmed chair. The dinner had just begun, but she already felt like she was sitting in a den of wolves, draped in silk. And her very first instinct was, run. Dinner unfolded under the soft glow of crystal chandeliers, but for Lily, every passing minute felt like silent torture. She tried to mimic how others held their cutlery, but her fingers were stiff with anxiety. No one insulted her directly, but every glance stripped her presence bare, an obvious flaw in their crafted perfection. "And where do you study, Lily?" a middle-aged man asked, his voice pleasant yet calculated. "I'm not in college," she answered gently. "I work at a small neighborhood bakery." A hush fell over the table, dark and heavy. Only the clink of glasses against plates echoed coldly. "Begging." "How quaint," Veronica smirked. "Maybe next time you can bring pastries for the board meeting, see how they react." Laughter rippled around the table. Lily lowered her head, swallowing hard. Aunt Margaret, the only person she knew in the room, said nothing. She didn't defend her, didn't interject. She just sipped her wine quietly, as though she hadn't heard a thing. "Do you have a boyfriend, Lily?" a younger woman asked teasingly. Lily shook her head. "Oh my, don't tell me you're still..." Untouched, Veronica let out a cruel laugh and the entire table erupted. Tears burned behind Lily's eyes, but she bit her lip. She thought of her mother, frail and resting at home, of late nights mixing dough, of secret dreams to go to college. All of it felt cheap, ridiculous, in front of these people draped in silk and gold. Still, Aunt Margaret said nothing. She merely glanced at her wine glass, pretending not to see her niece breaking apart. "She looks like a character from a prehistoric documentary," someone whispered. Another joke, another stab. And Lily knew if no one stopped this, she would break. A chair scraped back sharply, the sound slicing through the air like thunder. Laughter halted mid-breath, choked by the sudden storm. Lily looked up, tears still clinging to her lashes, just in time to see a tall figure rise from across the table. Nathan Hale. She recognized him from magazine covers. The CEO of Hale Innovations, one of the youngest billionaires in the country. Now he stood there, tailored black tuxedo immaculate, eyes razor-sharp as they swept across the table. "How strange," he said, his voice low and commanding. "It seems some people here have forgotten the meaning of respect." No one responded, no one dared. Working at a bakery is nothing to be ashamed of. Mocking honest work, however, that's shameful. His gaze landed squarely on Veronica as he said this, and her face blanched. Lily sat frozen. She didn't understand what was happening, or why someone like Nathan Hale was speaking for her. He walked slowly to the table, stopping behind her chair. "I don't believe she should be subjected to this performance any longer," he said, calm but with steel in his tone. Lily turned to Aunt Margaret, searching for support, but her aunt looked down, avoiding all eye contact. Nathan extended his hand toward her. "Miss Carter, if you'll allow me, I have a table nearby. No one laughs at people there." The entire room fell into a silence so thick Lily could hear her own heartbeat. Someone cleared their throat. A fork clattered to the floor. But all eyes were locked on her. She had never held the hand of someone so powerful. His hand was warm, steady. She didn't know why, but she placed hers in his. As they walked through the rows of tables, no one said a word. The same faces that had mocked her now looked away, from her and from him. Nathan led her to a small table by the window, far from the crowd. Soft light framed his strong features and those unreadable eyes. "Thank you," Lily whispered once they sat. Nathan smiled, eyes never leaving hers, as though she were the only person in the room. "Sometimes," he said gently, "the things most worth cherishing are the ones the world forgets to value." The next morning, Lily was arranging scones in the glass case when the doorbell chimed. She looked up, and her heart skipped. Nathan Hale stood in the doorway of her little bakery, utterly out of place among the scent of butter, flour, and the soft jazz from her old radio. "Good morning, Miss Carter," he said, voice calm but certain. "I hear this place makes the best raisin buns in town." Lily nearly dropped the tray she was holding. She didn't understand why he was here. He could dine anywhere, but here he was, in her world of flour and jazz, smiling like she was the only name he remembered. They talked. About pastries, about the shop, about early mornings, and sometimes about the things people usually keep quiet. Nathan didn't treat her like a curiosity. He listened, really listened, and made her feel like an equal. Before leaving, he paused at the door. "I'm dining somewhere quieter tonight," he said. "A small restaurant, no ball gowns, no chandeliers, just good food and honest conversation. Will you join me?" Lily hesitated. Part of her wanted to say no, to protect herself, but another part, the same part that walked out of that dinner with her head high, wanted to say yes. That evening, she came. The restaurant was cozy, candlelit, no stares, no sneers. Nathan sat across from her, his eyes unchanged, calm, focused, attentive. "Why did you help me?" she asked softly. Nathan met her eyes. "Because I used to be you. The outsider, the one knocking on doors that never opened." They talked about life, about her mother, about dreams postponed by bills, medicine, and hard truths. "I want to go to college," Lily confessed. "Not to escape the bakery, but to build something of my own." Nathan nodded, a slow smile curving his lips. "Then start with something small," he said, "like tonight. A meal, a conversation, and the chance to believe that not everything beautiful is fake." In the days that followed, Nathan started showing up more often. Not with fanfare or spectacle, just quietly, slipping into the bakery each morning, picking a jam tart or cinnamon twist, sometimes staying a few extra minutes to hear Lily talk about customers or how she burned the last batch of cookies. He didn't pry. He never made her feel watched or studied. Instead, he made everything feel lighter, as if his presence alone eased the tension in the air. Their evenings together weren't spent in glamorous restaurants, but at riverside diners, or the little Mexican place on the corner, where Nathan joked about breaking into a sweat from too much chili. Once, he brought her to the park and laid out a picnic blanket himself, even though the grass was still damp from rain. He noticed everything, brought an extra jacket for her when the temperature dropped, ordered herbal tea instead of wine when he sensed her hesitation, quietly arranged for someone to help care for her mother without ever asking for thanks. She once asked him, "Why are you so kind to me?" Nathan only smiled, his eyes fixed on the distance. "Because you're not used to people being kind. And I'm too used to people faking it." Lily didn't reply, but something started to grow inside her. Not admiration, it was deeper than that. It was the feeling of being seen, being cared for, being valued. Not for what she could become, but for who she was right now. And that terrified her more than anything, because the truest things were always the most fragile. One drizzly afternoon, while Lily was wiping down tables, Nathan stepped in, his coat damp but his eyes steady. "There's a place I'd like to show you," he said, voice gentle, like he didn't want to break whatever fragile trust had begun to form. "It's not a restaurant, not a hotel, just a place where I get to be myself." Lily looked into his eyes for a long moment. There was no demand in them, no expectations, only an invitation. Simple, like an open hand. She nodded. They left the city as the air grew colder. In the car, Lily leaned her head against the window, letting the wind and trees carry her thoughts. Nathan didn't speak, but his hand rested near the gear shift. Open, waiting. She placed her hand in his. The cabin emerged through the trees like something from a dream. Not extravagant, just warm. Not grand, just right. Inside, dinner was humble. They spoke of unfinished dreams, of loneliness in crowded rooms, of the difference between being loved and being needed. When Nathan brushed her cheek, Lily didn't pull back. The first kiss came like a sigh, slow, unadorned, unhurried. No declarations, but everything in their bodies whispered truths only the wounded could recognize. That night, by the fire, Lily allowed herself to believe that someone like Nathan could truly see her, that a girl who baked bread could be worthy of something soft. She fell asleep with his warmth still wrapped around her, thinking maybe this time she wouldn't wake up alone. But when the morning light broke through the windows, the other side of the bed was empty. The pillow beside her was cold. The fire had died. Nathan was gone. On the table, a thick envelope, a folded note. "Urgent business called me away. The car will take you home." Beside it, a thick envelope. Money. Lily stood there, staring at the envelope like it might vanish if she blinked. The note trembled in her hands, but the real quake was somewhere deeper, in the quiet shattering of something she didn't dare name. Only one question echoed in her chest. Had she tasted something real, or just the sweet illusion of it? The days that followed passed in a haze. Lily still opened the bakery each morning, still kneaded dough, still smiled at customers, but inside her was an emptiness without name. The envelope of money sat untouched in a drawer. She didn't want to spend it. She couldn't throw it away. It was proof of something she couldn't define, love or illusion. One afternoon, as she wiped down the counter, the bell above the door rang. Nathan Hale stood there. No expensive suit, no cool facade, just him, with tired eyes and a bouquet of wildflowers in hand. "Do you have a minute?" he asked, voice rough like he hadn't slept in days. Lily froze, her hand tightening around the cloth. She didn't know whether to cry or turn away. "I know I vanished like a coward," Nathan said, "but you need to understand, that morning I was scared." "Scared of what?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "Of what I felt. You reminded me who I was, not the CEO, not the millionaire, but a boy who once dreamed someone like you could believe in him." He pulled a folded document from his pocket, a resignation letter from Hale Innovations. "I'm not here to buy forgiveness. I'm here to rebuild, if you'll let me." Lily said nothing. Her tears did all the speaking. "You don't have to forgive me now," Nathan continued gently. "Just know, every beautiful thing you dream of, you deserve. Not because of anyone, not because of me." She stepped forward, resting her hand on the wildflowers he held. "Then this time," she whispered, "we begin with the truth." Nathan nodded, eyes glistening. And in that tiny bakery, among the scent of sweet dough and wild blooms, they needed no more words. This will look enough to begin everything. 4 months later, on a gentle early spring evening, Nathan brought Lily back to where it all began, Le Grand Restaurant. But this time, it wasn't the grand chandelier-lit hall filled with judgmental glances. They ascended to the rooftop, a private space. Nathan had transformed into a garden overflowing with red roses, Lily's favorite flower. String lights hung like stars, casting a warm golden glow. Music drifted softly in the air, and Lily could barely speak. "I remember you once said," Nathan whispered as he led her to the center of the terrace, "that red roses made you feel loved, but not loudly." She didn't answer. Tears shimmered on her lashes. Then he knelt down, not with a dazzling diamond ring, but with a delicate pearl, soft and luminous under candlelight. "Because you," he said, "are the most natural beauty I've ever known. Not perfect, and never needing to be precious." Lily brought her hand to her lips, breath catching. "Maybe real love only needs one thing," she whispered. "To be seen, and still be loved." She nodded. They embraced among the roses, beneath the open sky and glowing lights, where old wounds were washed clean by the sincerity of a promise. A few weeks later, their wedding took place on a secluded beach beneath a blazing sunset. No extravagant ceremony, no showy guests, just their dearest loved ones and simple vows carried by the waves. Lily wore a pure white dress, her bare feet sinking into the sand, and Nathan whispered in her ear, "No one else in the world could ever be you." Their love no longer hid behind masks or fear. They were accepted not for wealth or status, but for the courage it took to live as their truest selves. They built a new life, a small home overlooking the sea, a charming bakery, and lazy mornings with coffee and red roses. No one called it a fairy tale, but to Lily and Nathan, it was the most magical thing they ever dared believe was real.